I smoothed my dress for the 100th time, taking a deep breath before stepping into the grand foyer of the Finnegan estate. The chandelier sparkled overhead, casting a warm glow on the polished marble floors. This was it, my official introduction to Daniel's family as his wife. "There you are, darling," Daniel said, appearing at my side. He squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Ready to meet everyone?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "As ready as I'll ever be." We made our way through the crowd of well-dressed guests, stopping to chat with various aunts, uncles, and cousins. I tried to keep track of names and faces, but it was overwhelming. Just as I was starting to relax, I heard a sharp voice behind me. "So this is the new Mrs. Reed." I turned to find myself face to face with Adelaide Finnegan, my mother-in-law. Her critical gaze swept over me, lingering on my simple cocktail dress. "It's lovely to finally meet you, Mrs. Finnegan," I said. Extending my hand, she ignored it, instead lifting her crystal wine glass. "I do hope you'll make an effort to learn about wine, dear. It is the family business, after all." Daniel stepped in. "Mom, Ella's already quite knowledgeable about—" "Oh, please, Daniel," Adelaide cut him off. "I'm sure your physical therapist wife has many talents, but I doubt wine appreciation is one of them." I felt my cheeks burning. "Actually, Adelaide!" A booming voice interrupted. Gregory Finnegan approached, clapping a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "There you are. I see you've met our Ella." Adelaide's lips thinned. "Yes, we were just discussing her expertise." Gregory turned to me with a warm smile. "Don't let this one intimidate you," he said, jerking a thumb at his wife. "I'm sure you'll fit right in." "Thank you, Mr. Finnegan," I said gratefully. "Please call me Gregory. We're family now." Adelaide's nostrils flared. "Speaking of family, I believe it's time for the toast. Daniel, come along." As they walked away, I overheard Adelaide hissing, "Really, Daniel, a physical therapist? What were you thinking?" I blinked back tears, trying to compose myself. A server passed by with a tray of wine glasses, and I grabbed one, downing half of it in one gulp. "Whoa there," a voice said. I turned to see a woman in her late 50s smiling at me. "First time meeting Adelaide?" I nodded ruefully. "That obvious?" She laughed. "I'm Rosemary, a distant cousin. Don't worry, we've all been there. Adelaide can be challenging." "That's putting it mildly," I muttered. Rosemary patted my arm. "Just remember, you married Daniel, not his mother. Now come on, let's get you another drink before the toast." We made our way to the bar, where Rosemary ordered 2 glasses of red wine. As we waited, I noticed Adelaide glaring at us from across the room. "So, Ella," Rosemary said, "tell me about yourself. How did you and Daniel meet?" I launched into the story, grateful for the distraction. Just as I was finishing, Daniel appeared at my side. "There you are," he said, kissing my cheek. "I see you've met Rosemary." "Yes, she's been very kind," I replied. Daniel lowered his voice. "Listen, I'm sorry about my mother. She'll come around, I promise." Before I could respond, Gregory clinked his glass for attention. "If I could have everyone's attention, please. I'd like to propose a toast to the newest member of our family, Ella Reed." All eyes turned to me, and I felt my face flush. Adelaide's gaze was particularly piercing. Gregory continued, "To Ella, who has already brought so much joy to our Daniel, may she always feel welcome in our home and our hearts." As glasses clinked around me, I took a sip of wine, praying I wouldn't choke. Suddenly Adelaide's voice rang out, and perhaps Ella would like to say a few words. After all, she is joining quite a prestigious family. I'm sure she has some thoughts on the matter. The room fell silent. Daniel squeezed my hand, but I knew I had to face this on my own. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward, my wine glass trembling slightly in my hand. I never expected a wine magazine to be the catalyst for World War III in the Finnegan household, but here we were. The latest issue of Vintner's Voice had just arrived, and Adelaide's shrill voice echoed through the manor. "This is preposterous," she shrieked, storming into the living room, where Daniel and I were enjoying a quiet morning. "How dare they give our Celestial Cabernet only 88 points? It's an outrage," Daniel sighed, setting down his coffee. "Mom, it's just one review. We can't expect top marks every time." Adelaide's eyes narrowed. "Just one review? This could ruin us, Daniel. Our reputation." "Is still intact," I interjected, trying to keep my voice calm. 88 points is still a good score." She whirled on me, her face flushed. "What would you know about it? You probably can't tell the difference between a fine wine and grape juice." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that engaging would only make things worse. Daniel stood up, placing a hand on his mother's arm. "Mom, that's enough. Ella's right. We shouldn't overreact." Adelaide jerked away from him, flipping through the magazine. Suddenly, she froze, her eyes widening. What is this?" I leaned forward, curious despite myself. There, on the page, was a glowing review of a wine I'd suggested for our new budget-friendly line. 95 points and a Critics' Choice Award. "Impossible," Adelaide muttered. This swill? It can't be." "That's wonderful news," Gregory said, entering the room. "Ella, this was your idea, wasn't it?" "Well done." Adelaide's head snapped up, her gaze locking onto me with laser-like intensity. "You," she hissed. "You did this on purpose, didn't you? To humiliate me?" I felt the blood drain from my face. "What? No, of course not. I just thought. You thought you'd show up the family expert, is that it?" Adelaide advanced on me, her voice rising. "Little Miss Nobody from nowhere, thinking she can waltz in and take over." Daniel stepped between us. "Mom, stop it. This isn't Ella's fault." "Oh, defend her. Why don't you?" Adelaide sneered. "Your precious wife, who probably learned everything she knows about wine from the bargain bin at the grocery store." The room fell silent. I could feel tears pricking at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Gregory cleared his throat awkwardly. "Adelaide, that's quite enough," he said firmly. "Ella's contribution has clearly been valuable. We should be celebrating, not." "Celebrating?" Adelaide laughed bitterly. "Oh yes, let's celebrate the death of standards in this family. First Daniel marries a commoner, and now we're praising cheap plunk. What's next? Boxed wine?" I couldn't take it anymore. Standing up, I faced Adelaide directly. "Mrs. Finnegan, I understand you're upset about the review, but that doesn't give you the right to insult me or my background. I may not have grown up in your world, but I'm here now, and I'm trying my best to contribute." Adelaide's eyes glittered dangerously. "Oh, you're contributing all right, to the downfall of everything this family has built. You think you can just walk in here with your middle-class tastes and change everything?" "That's enough," Daniel shouted, startling us all. "Mom, I love you, but I won't stand here and let you talk to my wife like this. Ella is family now, whether you like it or not." Adelaide recoiled as if she'd been slapped. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. Instead, she straightened her spine and looked down her nose at me. "Family?" she said coldly. "We'll see about that. This isn't over, Ella. Not by a long shot." With that, she swept out of the room, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. Daniel put his arm around me, pulling me close. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I never thought she'd react like this." Gregory sighed heavily. "I'll talk to her. Try not to worry, Ella. This will blow over." But, as I watched him leave, following in Adelaide's wake, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Adelaide's words echoed in my mind. This isn't over. I had a sinking feeling she was right, and that the worst was yet to come. The annual Finnegan family reunion was in full swing, and I felt like a fish out of water. Everywhere I turned, there were cousins, aunts, and uncles I'd never met, all eyeing me with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Adelaide's influence was clear. Whispers followed me like a shadow. "There's Daniel's new wife," I overheard one elderly aunt say. "The physical therapist. Can you imagine?" I gritted my teeth and plastered on a smile, determined not to let them see how much it hurt. Daniel squeezed my hand reassuringly as we made our rounds. "Don't let them get to you," he murmured. "They'll come around eventually." But as the day wore on, I wasn't so sure. Every attempt I made to connect was met with polite disinterest or thinly veiled disdain. Even Gregory, usually my ally, seemed distant and preoccupied. Things came to a head during dinner. I was seated between Daniel and Rosemary, grateful for at least one friendly face. Adelaide held court at the head of the table, regaling everyone with stories of the family's winemaking legacy. "Of course, maintaining our standards is of utmost importance," she said, her eyes flicking to me. "We can't let just anyone influence our process." I felt Daniel tense beside me. Before he could speak, I laid a hand on his arm. "It's okay," I whispered. "Let it go." But Adelaide wasn't finished. "Daniel, darling, why don't you tell everyone about the new vintage you're working on? The one using traditional methods?" Daniel cleared his throat. "Actually, Mom, I've been experimenting with some new techniques lately. Ella had some interesting ideas." "Ella?" Adelaide's laugh was like shattered glass. And what, pray tell, does a physical therapist know about winemaking? The table fell silent. I could feel every eye on me, waiting for my response. My cheeks burned, but I forced myself to meet Adelaide's gaze. I may not have grown up in the wine industry, I said quietly, but I've been learning, and sometimes a fresh perspective can lead to innovation. Adelaide's eyes narrowed. Innovation? Is that what we're calling it now? Diluting generations of expertise with amateur opinions? That's enough, Mom, Daniel said sharply. Ella's ideas have merit. The critics seem to think so, anyway. A collective gasp went around the table. Adelaide's face turned an alarming shade of red. How dare you bring that up here, she hissed. In front of the entire family. Why not? Daniel shot back. Aren't we supposed to celebrate each other's successes? The tension in the room was palpable. I wanted to disappear, to sink into the floor and vanish. But I forced myself to sit up straight, refusing to be cowed. Adelaide stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I will not sit here and be insulted in my own home. Daniel, when you're ready to remember where your loyalties should lie, you know where to find me. With that, she stormed out of the dining room. An uncomfortable silence descended, broken only by the clink of silverware as people awkwardly resumed eating. Gregory sighed heavily. I apologize for that, everyone. Please enjoy your meal. As dinner wrapped up, I retreated to the terrace, needing a moment alone. The cool night air was a balm to my frayed nerves. I heard footsteps behind me and turned, expecting to see Daniel. Instead, it was Gregory. Quite a show in there, he said, joining me at the railing. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. You know, Gregory continued, Adelaide wasn't always like this. She used to be kinder, more open to new ideas. What changed? I asked softly. Gregory's eyes were distant. Time, pressure, the weight of expectations, carrying on a family legacy. I turned to face him fully. Mr. Finnegan, Gregory, I want you to know that I'm not trying to change everything. I respect this family's history. I just want to contribute, to be a part of it. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I believe you, Ella. And for what it's worth, I think you're good for Daniel. For all of us, really. Just then, we heard raised voices from inside. Daniel and Adelaide were arguing, their words muffled, but their tones clear. I should go, I said, moving towards the door. Gregory caught my arm. Ella, wait. There's something you should know about Adelaide, something that might explain. But before he could finish, the terrace doors burst open. Daniel stood there, his face a mask of anger and hurt. That's it, he said, his voice shaking. I'm done. We're leaving. As he took my hand and led me away, I caught one last glimpse of Adelaide's face through the window. The triumph in her eyes sent a chill down my spine. Whatever Gregory had been about to tell me, I had a feeling things were about to get much, much worse. The tension in the Finnegan household was palpable as we gathered for the monthly family meeting. Daniel and I sat side by side, our hands clasped tightly under the table. Adelaide's eyes bore into us from across the room, her lips pursed in a thin line of disapproval. Gregory cleared his throat. Now, as you all know, our annual charity gala is coming up. We need to finalize the wine selection for the event. Before anyone could speak, Adelaide's voice cut through the air like a knife. I nominate Ella to lead the wine selection committee this year. My head snapped up in shock. Daniel's grip on my hand tightened. Mom, that's not fair, he protested. Ella's still learning about... Oh, Adelaide's eyebrow arched. I thought you said her ideas had merit. Surely she's up to the task? I could feel the trap closing in around me. If I refused, I'd be admitting my inadequacy. If I accepted, I'd be setting myself up for failure in front of the entire wine community. Taking a deep breath, I met Adelaide's gaze. I'd be honored to lead the committee. A flicker of surprise crossed Adelaide's face before she masked it with a smug smile. Wonderful. I'm sure you'll do your best. As the meeting adjourned, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Rosemary, her eyes filled with concern. Ella, dear, are you sure about this? The gala is a big deal. The wrong choice could be disastrous for the family's reputation. I nodded, trying to project more confidence than I felt. I know, but I have to try. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into research. I consulted wine experts, pored over vintage charts, and tasted more wines than I could count. Daniel supported me every step of the way, but I could see the strain it was putting on him. One evening, as I was finalizing my selections, Daniel entered our study looking troubled. "Ella, I just got off the phone with Mom. She's not happy with your choices." I sighed, rubbing my temples. Of course she's not. "What did she say?" Daniel hesitated. "She thinks they're too unconventional. She's threatening to go to the board if you don't change them." I felt a surge of anger. "She can't do that. This is my responsibility now." I know, Daniel said, pulling me into a hug. "We'll figure it out." The night before the gala, I was doing one last check of the wine cellar when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see Adelaide, her face unreadable in the dim light. "Mrs. Finnegan," I said cautiously, "can I help you with something?" She moved closer, her eyes never leaving mine. "I just wanted to see how our little sommelier was doing. Nervous?" I straightened my spine. "No, I'm confident in my choices." Adelaide's laugh was cold. "Oh, my dear, confidence won't save you when you serve subpar wine to some of the most discerning palates in the country." As she turned to leave, she paused. "You know, it's not too late to change your mind. I'd be happy to assist you." I shook my head. "Thank you, but I've made my decision." "Very well," she said softly. "On your head be it." The morning of the gala dawned bright and clear. As I entered the cellar to begin preparations, something felt off. I approached the cases containing my carefully selected wines, my heart pounding. With trembling hands, I opened the first bottle, bringing it to my nose. The acrid smell hit me immediately. Corked. I grabbed another bottle, then another. All ruined. Panic rose in my throat as the realization hit me. Someone had tampered with the wine, and I had a sickening feeling I knew exactly who was responsible. My mind raced. The gala was hours away. Hundreds of guests would be arriving soon. I had no time to source new wines, and using the backup selection would be admitting defeat. As I stood there, surrounded by spoiled wine, I knew I had to make a choice. I could either admit defeat and let Adelaide win, or I could find a way to turn this disaster into an opportunity. Taking a deep breath, I pulled out my phone. It was time to call in some favors and take the biggest risk of my life. The gala was in full swing, and I felt like I was walking on eggshells. My last-minute wine selections had arrived just in time, thanks to a few frantic calls to some industry contacts I'd made. As I surveyed the room, I could see guests mingling, crystal glasses in hand, none the wiser to the chaos that had preceded this moment. "Ella, darling." Adelaide's voice cut through the crowd. She glided towards me, a predatory smile on her face. "How are your selections being received?" I forced a smile. "Quite well, thank you. The Malbec seems to be a particular hit." Adelaide's eyes narrowed. "Is that so? How unexpected." Before I could respond, Gregory appeared at my side. "Ella, my dear, I must say I'm impressed. The wines are exquisite. Where did you source that Chenin Blanc?" I opened my mouth to answer, but Adelaide cut in. "Yes, Ella, do tell us. I'm sure we'd all love to know where you found such unique choices at the last minute." The accusation in her tone was clear. I felt a bead of sweat form on my brow. Suddenly, a commotion near the buffet table caught everyone's attention. One of the guests, an influential wine critic, was doubled over, retching violently. "Oh my God," someone gasped. "Is he all right?" As chaos erupted around us, Adelaide's voice rose above the din. "It must be the wine. Ella, what have you done?" All eyes turned to me. I felt the room spinning, my carefully laid plans crumbling around me. "No, that's impossible. I tasted everything myself. It was fine." Gregory stepped forward, his face grave. "Ella, I think you'd better explain what's going on." With trembling hands, I recounted the discovery of the spoiled wine and my scramble to replace it. As I spoke, I saw doubt and suspicion creep into the faces of those around me. Adelaide's triumphant smirk was almost unbearable. "You see? I told you she wasn't up to this task. Now she's poisoned our guests." "That's not true," I protested. "Someone tampered with the original selection. I had to." "Tampered?" Adelaide gasped, feigning shock. "Are you accusing someone in this family of sabotage?" The tension in the room was palpable. I could see Daniel pushing his way through the crowd, Fiz's concern etched on his face. But before he could reach me, Gregory held up a hand. "Enough," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Ella, these are serious accusations. Do you have any proof?" I hesitated, my mind racing. I don't, but—" "Then I think it's best if you leave," Gregory said, his disappointment evident. "We'll discuss this later." As security began to escort me out, I caught sight of Adelaide's smug expression. Something inside me snapped. I couldn't let her win. Not like this. "Wait," I called out, my voice stronger than I felt. "There's something you all need to know." The room fell silent. Even Adelaide looked taken aback by my sudden outburst. "I may not have proof of the tampering," I said, my heart pounding, "but I do have proof that the wines I served tonight are not responsible for what happened, because they're not the wines I originally selected." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Gregory's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Taking a deep breath, I launched into the full story. The spoiled wine, my frantic calls, the last-minute substitutions. As I spoke, I saw realization dawning on some faces, skepticism on others. "If you don't believe me," I finished, "check the cellar. The original ruined bottles are still there." For a long moment, no one moved. Then, to my surprise, Rosemary stepped forward. "I'll go with you," she said. "I want to see for myself." As we turned to leave, I caught Adelaide's eye. The look of fury and fear on her face told me everything I needed to know. This was far from over, but for the first time, I felt like I might have a fighting chance. Gregory's voice stopped us at the door. "Ella," he said, his tone unreadable. "When we return, I expect a full explanation, and if what you're saying is true, there will be consequences." I nodded, squaring my shoulders. As we headed for the cellar, I knew that whatever happened next would change everything. The truth was about to come out, and there was no turning back now. The cellar was eerily quiet as Rosemary and I descended the stairs, followed closely by Gregory and a handful of curious guests. The weight of the moment pressed down on me, making each step feel like a mile. "Here," I said, my voice echoing in the cavernous space. "This is where I found the spoiled wine." I led them to the rack where I'd made my grim discovery earlier that day. With trembling hands, I pulled out a bottle and uncorked it. The acrid smell of vinegar filled the air, causing several people to recoil. "Good Lord," Gregory muttered, his face pale. This is unthinkable." Rosemary stepped forward, her brow furrowed. "Ella, dear, when exactly did you discover this?" I recounted the events of the morning, watching as understanding dawned on their faces. As I finished, Rosemary's eyes widened. "I saw Adelaide down here early this morning," she said slowly. "She said she was doing a final check, but—" A collective gasp went through the group. Gregory's face hardened. "Are you certain, Rosemary?" She nodded, her expression grim. "Positive. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now—" Before anyone could respond, we heard footsteps on the stairs. Adelaide appeared, her face a mask of concern that didn't quite reach her eyes. "What's going on down here?" she asked, her gaze darting between us. "Shouldn't we be attending to our guests?" Gregory turned to face his wife, his voice low and dangerous. "Adelaide, did you tamper with the wine?" For a moment, Adelaide's composure slipped. I saw fear flash in her eyes before she recovered. "Gregory, darling, what are you talking about? Of course not." "Then how do you explain this?" I asked, holding up the spoiled bottle. Adelaide's eyes narrowed. "Well, clearly you've made a mistake in your selections. I told you she wasn't up to this task, Gregory." But her words lacked their usual venom. I could see doubt creeping into the faces around us. Suddenly, Daniel burst into the cellar, his face flushed. "What's going on? Ella, are you okay?" Before I could answer, Rosemary spoke up. "Daniel, I'm afraid we've uncovered something rather disturbing. It appears your mother may have sabotaged Ella's wine selection." Daniel's face went from confusion to shock to anger in a matter of seconds. "Mom, is this true?" Adelaide's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. "Daniel, sweetheart, you can't possibly believe—" "I saw you, Adelaide," Rosemary interrupted. "This morning in the cellar. You were here alone with the wine." The silence that followed was deafening. Adelaide's gaze darted around the room, looking for an ally and finding none. Finally, her shoulders sagged. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I was trying to protect us, our legacy. She jabbed a finger at me, was going to ruin everything with her common tastes and lack of refinement." The admission hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I felt Daniel's hand slip into mine, squeezing tightly. Gregory's voice, when he spoke, was filled with a quiet fury. "Adelaide, do you realize what you've done? You've not only betrayed our family, but potentially put our guests at risk. This is unforgivable." Adelaide's face crumpled. "Gregory, please." But he held up a hand, silencing her. "We'll discuss this later. For now, I think it's best if you retire to your room. We have a gala to salvage." As Adelaide was led away, her sobs echoing through the cellar, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. I'd won, but at what cost? Gregory turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Ella, I owe you an apology, and I believe we all owe you our gratitude. Your quick thinking may have saved us from disaster." The others murmured in agreement, but I barely heard them. My mind was reeling, trying to process everything that had just happened. As we made our way back upstairs, Daniel pulled me aside. "Ella, I'm so sorry. I never thought my mother would go this far." I looked into his eyes, seeing the pain and conflict there. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Daniel shook his head. "I don't know, but whatever comes next, we'll face it together." As we rejoined the gala, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The truth was out, but the real battle was far from over. The gala had devolved into a maelstrom of whispers and sidelong glances. As Daniel and I re-entered the main hall, the tension was palpable. Gregory cleared his throat, addressing the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. We've had a situation arise that requires our immediate attention. I'm afraid we'll have to cut the evening short." A chorus of murmurs rippled through the guests. I could feel their eyes on me, questioning, accusing. My cheeks burned with a mix of shame and anger. Suddenly, Adelaide's voice rang out from the top of the grand staircase. "Oh, don't let me spoil your fun." All heads turned. Adelaide stood there, her hair disheveled, a half-empty wine bottle clutched in her hand. She looked wild, unhinged. "Mother," Daniel said, his voice low and warning, "please don't do this." But Adelaide was beyond reason. She descended the stairs, her eyes locked on me. "You," she spat, "you little upstart. You think you can waltz in here and destroy everything I've built?" I stood my ground, even as my heart raced. "Adelaide, I never wanted to destroy anything. I just wanted to be part of this family." She laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Family? You know nothing about family, about legacy, about sacrifice." Gregory stepped forward. "Adelaide, that's enough. You're making a scene." "A scene?" she shrieked. "Oh, I'll give you a scene." Before anyone could react, Adelaide hurled the wine bottle. It sailed past my head, missing me by inches, and shattered against the wall behind me. Red wine splattered across the pristine white paint like blood. Gasps and screams filled the air. Daniel pulled me close, shielding me with his body. But I gently pushed him aside, facing Adelaide head-on. "Why?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Why do you hate me so much?" For a moment, Adelaide's mask slipped. I saw pain, fear, and something that looked almost like regret flash across her face. But then the hatred returned, fiercer than ever. "Because you're everything I never got to be," she hissed. "Young, free, loved for who you are instead of what you represent. Do you have any idea what it's like to spend your entire life living up to someone else's expectations?" The room fell silent. Even the guests seemed to be holding their breath. Gregory's voice, when he spoke, was filled with a quiet fury I'd never heard before. "Adelaide, that's enough. You've gone too far this time." He turned to face the stunned crowd. "I apologize, everyone. It seems my wife is unwell. Please, enjoy the rest of your evening. The Finnegan family thanks you for your understanding." As security discreetly led Adelaide away, her sobs echoing through the hall, Gregory approached Daniel and me. "Ella," he said, his voice heavy with emotion, "I owe you an apology. I should have seen what was happening, should have put a stop to it long ago." I shook my head, feeling suddenly exhausted. "You couldn't have known." Gregory's eyes were sad. "Perhaps not, but I should have. Adelaide's behavior, it's been building for years. I just didn't want to see it." He straightened, his face set with resolve. "I want you both to know that I intend to separate from Adelaide. Her actions tonight and everything leading up to it are unforgivable." Daniel gasped. "Dad, are you sure?" Gregory nodded. "It's long overdue, son. And Ella," he turned to me, "I hope you can forgive us. Forgive me for everything you've endured." I felt tears welling up in my eyes. "Of course, Gregory. But before I could finish, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Adelaide had broken free from security and was storming back into the hall, her face a mask of fury. "You think this is over?" she screamed. "You think you can just cast me aside like yesterday's trash? I made this family what it is." As she lunged towards us, time seemed to slow. I saw the glint of something metallic in her hand. A corkscrew. its point aimed directly at me. In that moment, everything hung in the balance. My life, my future with Daniel, the fate of the Finnegan family, it all came down to what happened in the next few seconds. As Adelaide closed in, I made a split-second decision. I wouldn't cower. I wouldn't run. Whatever came next, I would face it head-on, just as I had every other challenge since joining this family. I stood my ground, staring into Adelaide's eyes, silently daring her to do her worst. As Adelaide lunged at me, time seemed to slow. I saw the glint of the corkscrew, heard Daniel's shout of alarm, felt the collective gasp of the crowd. But I stood my ground, my eyes locked on Adelaide's. In that moment, something shifted. Adelaide's face crumpled, the fury giving way to anguish. The corkscrew clattered to the floor as she collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm sorry," she wailed. "I'm so sorry. I've ruined everything." The silence that followed was deafening. I looked around at the stunned faces of the guests, at Gregory's mix of relief and sorrow, at Daniel's concern. Then, surprising even myself, I knelt beside Adelaide. "It's okay," I said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's over now." Security gently led Adelaide away, and as the commotion died down, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. Daniel wrapped his arms around me, and I leaned into his embrace. "It's really over," I whispered. 1 year later, I stood in the vineyard, cradling my swollen belly as I watched the sun set over the rows of grapevines. So much had changed since that fateful night. Adelaide had gone to a rehabilitation center, finally confronting the demons that had driven her for so long. Gregory had made good on his promise to separate, but he'd also shown compassion, ensuring Adelaide had the help she needed. As for me and Daniel, we'd thrown ourselves into the family business with renewed passion. My commoner's palate, as Adelaide had once sneered, turned out to be a blessing. The wine I'd selected for the gala, the one that had sparked so much drama, had become a runaway hit. Ella's Blend, as we'd named it, was now the flagship wine of the Finnegan estate. Its success had opened doors I never thought possible, allowing us to modernize the winery while respecting its rich history. "There you are." Daniel's voice pulled me from my reverie. He joined me, wrapping an arm around my waist. "How are my two favorite people doing?" I smiled, placing his hand on my belly. "We're perfect, just enjoying the view." "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he mused. "You know, I never truly appreciated all this until you came along." I leaned into him, feeling a surge of love and gratitude. "It's more than I ever dreamed of." Just then, we heard a car approaching. My heart skipped a beat as I recognized the vehicle. "She's here," I whispered. Daniel squeezed my hand. "Are you sure about this?" I nodded. "It's time." We walked to the house, arriving just as Adelaide stepped out of the car. She looked different, softer somehow, the hard edges of bitterness worn away by time and introspection. "Ella, Daniel," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Thank you for having me." I stepped forward, taking her hands in mine. "Welcome home, Adelaide." Her eyes filled with tears as she took in my pregnant form. "Oh, my dear, you look radiant." As we led her inside, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The journey had been hard, filled with pain and conflict, but it had led us here, to understanding, to forgiveness, to family. Later that evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Gregory and Rosemary joining us in a show of unity, I looked at the faces of my family. My hand found Daniel's under the table, and I felt our child kick, as if sensing the moment's significance. Adelaide raised her glass of sparkling cider. "To new beginnings," she said, her voice thick with emotion. As we echoed her toast, I realized that this messy, complicated, beautiful family was everything I'd ever wanted. We'd been through fire, but we'd emerged stronger, our bonds tempered by adversity. The future stretched out before us, as rich and complex as the finest wine, and I couldn't wait to savor every moment of it. As the conversation flowed around me, I caught Adelaide's eye. She gave me a small, genuine smile, one of gratitude, of acceptance, of hope, and I knew in that moment that everything we'd endured had been worth it. This was my family now, in all its imperfect glory, and I wouldn't have it any other way.